Hello, beautiful beginners. Did you know August is the month of gladiolas, secondary poppies, but first gladiolas. So I was like, I have to paint these. Also, my daughter, this is a picture I took, has these gorgeous gladiolas. These are in her kitchen. Look at these. Aren't they beautiful? Unfortunately, she wasn't going to give me one of these beautiful stalks of gladiolas. I don't blame her. So we are going to paint those today. I hope you'll join me. I'm using 140-pound cold press paper. This is just kind of a practice one I did. You can see the pink. I did add a little bit more pink. Hers had quite a bit more white in them, but aren't they gorgeous? Look at that. Just beautiful. So anyways, let me get my reference photo there. Whoop. Put back in so I can kind of be inspired by that. And again, I've got my 140-pound cold press paper. I did this one on those Artisto pads, now called Artistic Eye. But I'm actually going to use my Meeden paper. Just because I have it sitting here. I'm also going to be using my number 8 brush. This is mine, but as you know, I adore the Velvet Touch 8. So you can sign up to be notified when we re-release my little set, but the Velvet Touch is gorgeous, you guys. It's got a really nice feel. I made mine about the same length because I like that control. And then let's see, what else have I got here you might ask me about? I'm using my Paul Rubens. You know, I predominantly use Paul Rubens. Love, love, love them. By the way, I think this month is our 15th anniversary, which is kind of surprising because I've been buying their paints for a long time, way before I was on YouTube. So they did send me something saying they've been around for 15 years now, and I thought that was pretty cool. So this is their small set. I believe this is the 36. They're fabulous, you guys, and you'll see that as I use them here. I love them. So what I want to do first is just kind of show you how I might use guidelines for gladiolas, because I think that can be, it's really helpful for me to see and get a feel for these flowers, to kind of break them down. Sometimes when you're looking at them all as one flower, they can look kind of complicated. But let me just show you how I broke them down. And that way, if you want to repaint these, you can paint them over and over. So I'm looking at my daughter's flowers here too. So in a gladiola, you are going to have, of course, that center. And then you're going to have 3 leaves kind of coming out like almost in a triangle. And then you're actually going to have another triangle coming out kind of like this. So I thought that was kind of interesting, but it gives me a good guideline to follow. So I'm looking at my daughter's flowers here, and they're coming out of the center. So I'm going to kind of do this just because that's where the flower is kind of flapping over. And then let's just start with our first petal. So I'm going to come out following this wonderful guideline. If you follow me, you know I love my guidelines. And then I'm going to go ahead and come out and do this one. And hers are kind of frilly at the ends, which I love. And I think I might even expand on this one and make it a little bit bigger, because hers were quite wide, which I loved. And then we're going to have that one coming out. So here is our triangle. You could almost look at it like this, something like that. So that's basically how the petals are going to be coming out, if that helps as well. And then up here, I'll do this big fat leaf. And hers were really ruffly, which I loved. So there you go. Okay, so we've got the basis for those 3 petals. Let me just show you her picture here. So here's these 3 petals. See how there's 2 triangles? A triangle there and a triangle here. So I hope that helps you. Things like that have always really helped me. It kind of helps my, mind grasp what I'm doing here. And then I'm going to make this petal come out from the bottom. And I noticed on hers, it comes out about 3/4 of the way here. Something like that. And then same here. Like that. And same with this one here. And her petals were really ruffly, which I didn't really find when I Googled, just kind of interesting. And then out of the center, hers have these 3, I'll just use that guideline there, little stamens like that. And these were dark on hers. So that's kind of what I'm going to follow, just to keep in mind when you're drawing yours. And then of course, you have the little buds. So you have the green coming out of the stem, and then maybe the little ruffle of a flower coming out on the bud. So hopefully that helps. And like in her picture, I'm going to tuck the stem behind, and then up at the top I'm going to have a few buds coming out, and of course our beautiful long leaves, which I love. So that's kind of the pattern, and hopefully that gives you a little bit of for your eye to kind of grasp and make more sense of. All right, so let's get our paper here. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to put a flower here. I'm going to put a flower here. And I'm going to put another one, hold on 1 second here. So those little C shapes are what I'm using as my center and my front flower. So I'm just going to use my pencil here. Let me sharpen this a bit. Ooh, I opened it up. See, that is what happens, guys. I opened this upside down, so now I got a big mess. 1 second, pardon. My goodness, that needed to be. Look at all that. I'm not that great at editing, so I'm gonna have to leave this in there. Sorry, guys. Okay. So I'm gonna put that back on every once in a while. I do that. And follow the arrow. Sheesh, what a mess. That was a lot of shavings in there. I'm gonna get that off. There we go, okay. By the way, when I sharpen my pencils, I tend to turn my sharpener. I read years ago it was easier on the pencils. So there you go. Okay, back to this. So I'm going to have a leaf of petal coming out there. So those are my 3, the kind of the triangle. And then I'll have one coming out here, and I'm going to leave it at that. So let me go ahead and draw in. So I've got my guideline here, making it really fluffy because hers were really fluffy. And I'm going to draw this a little bit darker than I might normally. So like that. And this front leaf, kind of trying to look at her drawing there. And I'm just going to say this one is kind of tucked in the back there. Okay, let's go down to our bottom one. So I've got this lip, and now here are my petals. 1, 2, there's my triangle, and here's my other triangle. Like that. So now I'll draw my petals going right around the guideline, and that one's tucked behind. Here's, oop, I don't need that. There we go. And some of these are tucked in, so they're kind of harder to see. There we go. And I'm drawing a little bit darker than I might normally because I want you to see these. Here's those little middle things there. So fun. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's do one more here. There we go. This will make more sense once I start painting it. So I've got my guidelines. Let's draw these. Okay, so there are my flowers. 1 second, let me grab my photo of her flower. Okay, for reference. Okay, and then here's our little stamens, like that. Okay, so that's it for the flower. Then I'm going to create this stalk that's kind of coming up right through the middle of the flower. See how it comes up right through the middle? So it comes down here and goes up. Oop. Let me prop that up. Okay. And add some of those beautiful long leaves. And there we go. In the background here, I'll just create some more leaves coming out. Maybe another one here. And there we go. She actually had one really big one at the top, but I think I'm going to stop right there. Okay, there you go. And again, I'm kind of went a little darker than I might because I wanted you to be able to see what I'm drawing. I'll see if I have time to create a kit for this for you. They're only $2.50, and thank you for those that do purchase those. They do help. By the way, have I reminded you, you are an artist? Please say that to yourself every day. If you're here and you're painting with me, you're an artist. And I'm seeing all the beautiful work you guys have. And you truly are amazing artists. I especially like when you follow my tutorial and then you give it your twist. I think that's so cool. So the colors I'm going to use are going to be, I don't even think I'm going to use this today. I think what I will do is just do a little swatch down here at the bottom. So of course I'm going to use, because hers had this, that pink in it, that beautiful rose red that we love in our My Lang palette. So I'm going to use that color. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous, gorgeous? And then I'm going to keep this pretty simple. I'm going to use some cad yellow. There we go. And I'll water that down. And then our sap green, let's get some of that here. Oh, 3 gorgeous colors. There you go. So that'll be pretty much the gist of what I'm going to use are those 3 colors. I might use a little bit of a Payne's gray or something like that just for the little stamen in the middle. Okay, so I've got my A brush. I've also got my wash and my rinse water. So make sure you get that. Now I just dirtied mine up. I just washed my brush. But washing your your brush, and then always making sure to rinse it. So this side should stay pretty clean. This side is going to get dirty quicker, obviously, but really important in watercolors. Okay, so I wanted to scooch this over so you could see this beautiful Meeden palette, not just because it's so pretty, but I want you to see how I'm mixing here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to be glazing. So I've got a really light value here, meaning this is about 80% water, 20% pigment. So look how light that is. And if you need to practice that on a sheet, you know, just grab a sheet of paper and practice those values. So we want to start with our lightest value because we're going to glaze over and over. So that's pretty light in color, in saturation. And I'm just going to go around the edges here and start using the tip of my brush, that beautiful point, light pressure, and I'm holding my brush about 2 o'clock and pretty down far so that I can get some control here. And we just start laying in some of this water and pigment, but I'm leaving the center open. So I'm just going to keep going around. Now some of these are tucked in. And just painting the outer edges, avoiding the little stamen there. Again here, so just pressing into the belly a little bit to get a little wider. Wetting my brush. Wetting my brush again. So it's almost like a thirsty brush, and then I can come up with that brush and just soften some of that line. So a thirsty brush, just like it would be a thirsty sponge, I rinse my brush and go in and just soften these lines. I'm not going in there with a ton of water. Then going around this one. You guys are going to do great on this, by the way. Wet my brush, tap it off, go right along that edge. There we go. And we've got another petal here, so just grab a little bit of that pink, add it into some water. See how light that is? And it's very fluid. Come in here again, just using the tip of my brush. Rinse, tap off. Now go up along that edge and just soften it up. So let's do this one here. A little bit more pink. And water, tap, 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 get that excess water off. And I'm just going around to all of the petals. Just keep repeating that process. Pick up your paint, tap, 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 get that excess off. And then I've got that little bit of a hard line. So I'm just going in with a brush I dampened, kind of cleaned off, and just softening that edge. A little bit more paint. Oop, see, that's too dark. That's a darker value. So I want to add just a tiny bit more water. Tap, tap, tap. See how that's a little bit darker, but that's okay. Going around the edge, rinse my brush, soften that edge. It's a bit like that push-pull, so I'm going into it and pulling it out. Lining the edge, rinse my brush, tap it off, and now push-pull right along that edge, just to soften it up a bit. So we've got 2 of our flowers here now. Let's finish our third one. Little bit more water. Go in. And we're just going to keep glazing over these and adding more and more depth and layers. There we go. Rinse my brush, tap it off. And now push-pull, tap it off, push-pull. Softening that edge. Pick up some more of that. And I just repeat on every petal, going around that outer edge. Rinse my brush, tap it off. Push, pull, just using the tip of my brush to touch that edge and pull it out. And just soften that edge. Now I am being a little bit careful if I'm going right next to another petal that is wet. And I don't necessarily want to touch it. Rinse my brush, tap it off. Push, pull, just going into that edge with the tip of my brush, just to soften that up a bit. And we have one more petal here, right when I'm about out of paint. There we go. So I've got that 80% water, 20% pigment. It's fairly light. And then coming around this last one here, just really using the tip of my brush because that gives me more control. And notice I'm leaving the center white. So now push, pull, just pushing into that edge, softening it up like that. So now we've got this first layer, this first glaze. This is very similar, by the way, to if you've watched my 3-part peony series. We'll link that down below. It's free here on YouTube. And feel free to email me and I'll send you the little drawing. But it's very similar as you're glazing, just layers and layers. I'm going to go ahead in here and just paint these little buds like that. Rinse my brush. There we go. Okay, so, oh, and I forgot one tiny little petal here because each flower in the gladiola should have 6 petals, and just push, pull it out. Okay, so we've got a good base now. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go in with just a bit darker. So I'm going to go in with maybe, let's say, and you can test it out here on a swatch sheet. Maybe now I'm using almost 50-50 paint, 50-50, so 50 paint, 50 water, and, test it out. So that is a little bit darker. That's what I want. This was the first glaze. And I go in and I repeat this. So I'm using the tip of my brush again and just going to go in and repeat that whole push-pull. Go in, go around the edges, rinse my brush, push, pull, push right into the very edge with a thirsty brush. Now, the other thing you can do is while this is kind of wet, you can go in there and look how beautiful. Just tap in, picking up some of that paint, tap, 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 and you'll get that beautiful transition there, right? Isn't that pretty? Go in along this edge. Hers had quite a bit of white in the center. And we're going to add yellow to the very center. Rinse my brush, tap it off, push, pull. I'm just barely going in, remember, to the very edge. And if you get a hard line, just rinse your brush, tap it off, and go on in there. Now I'm gonna go in there, just the tip of my brush, and tap in, just like we did the other ones. Oh, so pretty. And you can keep repeating, tapping into that edge, because it really is going to just keep spreading. And anywhere you see a hard edge, just go in there, soften it up with that push-pull. Let's go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and go through all of these for you, because I feel like if you follow along, you're really gonna get a handle on that and be able to do this push-pull. Let's go in and do that one. Darker value. So I'm just using the very tip of my brush, rinse my brush, go in, kind of awkward there, rinse my brush, push, pull, and now while it's still a bit damp, go in there and tap in some of that dark. Like that, and just kind of let it do its thing. There we go. So you've got those really pretty dark edges. Wait till you see that yellow in the middle. There we go. A little bit more water. Okay. A little bit more. Tap off my brush. Push, pull. Just softening that edge. And then tapping in with that darker pink. Right around the edge and let it blend. One more time. Push, pull. Keep rinsing your brush because you're picking up pigment when you do that push, pull. So you want to get some of that off. There we go. And now we just have this one flower left here. Going right around the edge. This one too. There we go. Now rinse my brush. And make sure the direction you're pushing and pulling is going towards the center of the flower. There we go. Okay, we're getting close, guys. Let me keep going here, and who knows, I may cut part of this out because it's kind of a long process. And we're basically repeating. Tap off my brush. There we go. And let's do our last one here. Almost done. Then we'll add in that green and that yellow. That's going to be so beautiful and contrasting. Rinse my brush, tap it off very lightly. Push, pull. And we can go in and add a little bit, just the tiniest little dab straight from your pan. Like that. All right, there we go. And our last petal here. Rinse our brush. Rinse my brush. Tap it off. All right. There we go. Look how beautiful. Love these. Now let's go in with a tiny bit of that yellow. This is cad yellow. And I'm just going to go right into the middle. Isn't that so pretty? And we're glazing over. So this yellow is going to glaze over that pink and almost create like an orange. So pretty. And my yellow mixture is about 50-50, I'd say. There we go. All right, now you could definitely do that push-pull in there if you really wanted to. I'm going to kind of leave it because I like that. And now we'll go into these green leaves. So the technique you're going to use on the leaves, let me get my green around here. There we go. And I've got a sap green here. So that's what I'm using. If you have a special green that you like, by all means, use that. And I'm going to work starting up here. So point, just using the tip of my brush, point, press down, open that belly of the brush, the mid part of the brush. And just keep going. Point, press. Point, press. Point, press, open that belly. And then you can use the tip of the brush to kind of shape out your different shapes. So point, press. Point, press. There we go. Isn't that such a pretty color? Now I'm going to load quite a bit of my brush this time. 50-50 in the water and paint here, so you can see there it moves around pretty easily. And point, really open up that brush. I'm applying quite a bit of pressure there. I'm also tucking that behind. Pick up paint, point, press, open the belly, and come up and just use the tip to kind of tuck it behind there. Now here, to get even more width, I might use a bit of the side of my brush. So point, my brush is about 1 o'clock on its side, and then bring up to its tip and use the tip of the brush to kind of fill out the little areas. Here is a little leaf that is tucked behind. I love tucking behind some leaves because I just think it creates such interest. And our main stalk that goes right through the middle of the plant. So we'll tuck that in there. Isn't this just so fun, you guys? Point, start more and more pressure, opening up that belly. Look how wide that 8 brush can get. And use the tip to get behind the brush. Now, I think what I will do here too is add in a little bit of, just a tad bit. Let's get some more of our sap green. Tap, tap, tap. And then I'm just going to create a little area with some of that pink, because pink and red are going to create a beautiful olive green versus just grabbing an olive green. And I'm going to go along with the tip, light pressure of my brush, point, and come right along that edge. Let's do that one more time. Point all the way down, and it just gave this little bit of a hint of reddish green. See how that makes a difference there? So anytime I do flowers, I will mix my stem color and the color of my flower, and it always gives you this beautiful neutrally green. And maybe under here, like that. There we go. Oh, so pretty. Okay, let's do the bottom of our stem. And I think since the light is kind of coming from that direction, I'll go ahead and darken that side of the leaf. There we go. Just with the tip of my brush. And now I'll finish off the bottom of this leaf here. So that point, press, picking up paint, loading my brush, and this is where, point, press, I'm using a bit of the side of my brush because I want to get a little bit thicker, then just filling in with the tip. And now grab some of that green we mixed, add that in there, and just barely let that darken up. Oh, so pretty. Just using the tip of my brush to shadow out the left side of a lot of these. And we're about done. We just need to paint a few of the little sepals there, or the little stamens. Point press, point press. So I'm just creating those shadows. Rinse my brush, tap it off, and I might just go in with a tiny bit more of that pink. And just using the tip of my brush, create a few little lines up there. Okay, I'm going to use Payne's Gray for those little tiny pieces in the center of your flower. And I'm using that mixture pretty thick with the paint. Like that. Oop. And it's just a dab, really. Dab, dab, dab. And there we go. I think we're about done. Isn't that lovely? So exciting, right? Let's take a look at it. Make sure we're not missing anything. I'm looking at her flower. I don't think we are. And I hope you all give this a try. Now, I could always go in here if I want. Let me turn this to add just a tiny bit more definition to these bottom flowers. I could go in with that push-pull and going in with quite a thick mixture of that pink. And then wash my brush, rinse my brush, tap it off, and we go in again with that push and pull. And it creates just a little darker edge there. Or maybe in some of these folds. But you could have stopped right where I stopped a minute ago. That was perfectly fine as well. This is just if you want to add in a teeny bit more detail. There we go. Push pull. I'm kind of going sideways there because I don't want to get my hand in the way. But build these layers, and I don't typically go over 3 layers because I feel it could get a little bit muddy. And I think I'm about done. So I hope you guys give this a try. I am loving those of you over on my Patreon. There is definitely tiers where you can donate and you get a few more things, but lots of little mini series. And the best part, another reason why I created Patreon was so you could share your paintings, since we can't do that here on YouTube. But meanwhile, I'll be right here telling you, you are an artist, and I'm so grateful for you guys. This channel is just, what a blessing to bring us all together all over the world, and I really hope you give this a try. All right, everybody, I'll be right here supporting you, celebrating with you, and hop on over to Patreon, share your paintings. If you'd like to donate, you can. It all helps, really, truly. Every penny helps me buy more materials and paper and all kinds of things. All right, I will see you all soon, and sending you so much artistic energy and vibes and wishes. I'll see you soon.